Good morning. Oh, good morning for Chicago, but I know people are from all over India and Australia. So hello all. And first, I would like to welcome you all and thank you all for coming today. I'm Mani Rao, Chicago Chapter Chair of World Zatushri Chamber of Commerce. Generally, I start with the introduction of WZCC Chicago Chapter, which is a part of World Zatushri Chamber of Commerce, a non-profit organization at a global level, the economic engine for the well-being and prosperity of the community. I always give updates about our chapter, but today we have a very interesting program, so I will cut it short. If someone is interested in knowing more about it, then send me an email to wzc.chicago@gmail.com and I'll be happy to answer. Today, being the World Environment Day, we are addressing the issue of clean drinking water to promote good health. As we know, there is a scarcity of drinking water in many poor and underprivileged sectors of society, especially in third world countries, especially in rural areas. This is a global health and well-being issue. To have a clean drinking water should not be a privilege, but a fundamental human right. This just cannot be creating awareness, but offering the solutions by addressing the environmental issues facing humanity. What better way to promote that idea than to learn about this new technology for extracting water from air? Therefore, I welcome Bhargvi Goluru from Source, and Palan Kadgara and Polly Bada from WATERMAKER of India as our panelist, and Noshir Contractor, our moderator for the event. Before I hand it over to Noshir Contractor, I like to say something about our moderator, not Noshir Contractor. Noshir Contractor is the Jane S. and William J. White Professor of Behavioral Sciences in the McCormick School of Engineering and Applied Science, the School of Communication, and the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. He is the director of the Science of Networks in Communities, Sonic Research Group. He investigates how social and knowledge networks form and perform in a wide variety of contexts, including business enterprises, scientific communities, global health, and space travel. He is the president-elect of the International Communication Association, a distinguished scholar of the National Communication Association, and a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Association for Computing Machinery, and the International Communication Association. He received the Lifetime Service Award from the Organizational Communication and Information Systems Division of the Academy of Management. He received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the IIT Madras, where he received a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He has a PhD in communication from the Annenberg School of Communication at the University of Southern California. So I welcome Noshir as a moderator. Please take it over from here. Thank you, Noshir.
Thank you, Mani. I was under the impression that you were also going to introduce our panelists today. So would you be able to do that? Because I don't think I can do as much justice to them as you would. I certainly am thrilled to be able to introduce them. They are obviously very well-known scholars and come from very well-established organizations. So let me just start out by saying, first of all, I'm delighted to serve as a moderator for this event. I just add to the fact that we already talked about this being the World Environmental Day, which has been celebrated by the United Nations as its principal vehicle for encouraging awareness and action for the protection of the environment since the early 1970s. Today, our focus is primarily on water. And in an article that appeared just last month in the magazine Fast Company, they noted that there are more than 326 million trillion gallons of water on Earth. but that less than 3% of that water is fresh water. And more than 2/3 of that water is locked up in glaciers, polar ice caps, far beneath the Earth's surface, or otherwise unavailable. In short, only 0.5% of the Earth's water is actually available for us to drink. And so it's really important today that the World Zarathustra Chamber of Commerce Chicago chapter is celebrating World Environmental Day, featuring a discussion among experts on the topic of extracting water from air. This is particularly important because, as you will see today, that most of the work that has been done in terms of helping with water has focused on bottled water, on techniques like reverse osmosis, on techniques like desalination. And while there are continuing to be advances in that area, what is especially exciting about the two presentations that we are going to listen to today and the two companies that they represent, Source and WATERMAKER, is that the focus is not on using those traditional approaches, but instead, as Mani said, on extracting water from the air. So whether it's called atmospheric water generator or air water generator, AWG for short, both of the techniques, while being different, one focusing more on a refrigerant approach, another on a desiccant approach, both are fascinating new innovations. And I am absolutely thrilled that we have an opportunity today to introduce these two companies, and represented by Bhargavi Golaru from Source. Bhargavi, do you want to go ahead and do a brief introduction of yourself and then take it away?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Happy World Environmental Day. My name is Bhargavi Golaru, and I am with Source Global, and I'm a part of the Global Projects and Partners team. My role with Source is to build partnerships with nonprofits and NGOs, and also pair that with like funding opportunities to make sure we can deploy our technology in places where it's needed the most. I come from a civil and environmental engineering background. I've done a lot of work in the water, wastewater treatment space. And I decided to take on a new challenge in expanding Source in the nonprofit sector. So that's me. And not sure, do you want me to go ahead and start the presentation, or do you want to do introductions first?
It's not a bad idea. Why don't we also have Paulie and Palan introduce themselves from WATERMAKER, and then we can go back and come back to you for your presentation. I think that's a great idea, Bhargavi. So Paulie and Palan, take it away. I think Palan is on mute. There we go.
Good morning. My name is Palan Kadgara, and I am the founder and director at WATERMAKER India and WATERMAKER International. And I came across this technology in 2003 in the course of my travels in the US, and was totally enamored by it, and decided that the world needs an alternative source of water, and decided to form a company in India in 2003, 2004 to take it forward. We ended up building the first village system in India in 2009 and built several others since then. And you will see that in our presentation down the road. Paulie is our Chief Technology Officer, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I have a broad background in gas purification with a background in the semiconductor, compound semiconductor, chemical, and aerospace industries. I have 3 degrees in chemical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay and MIT. Go ahead, Paddy.
Great. Thank you so much again, Paulie. And just for our participants, it's really as delightful to see that we have 58 participants on the call. Feel free to put your comments and questions in the chat. We are planning to have plenty of time for the Q&A, so it would be really helpful to start banking those questions in the chat, even as you think about them. And then I will be happy to field those to our speakers here. So with no further ado, Bhargavi, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Sure. Please let me know once you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. Again, hello everyone. I'm here to talk a little bit about my company, Source Global. We started in 2014 and we are headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. We were originally called as Zero Mass Water, and we recently rebranded ourselves to Source Global. We are a public benefit corporation in the United States and also a certified B Corp, which is a merit used to identify for-profit businesses that are doing good for the people and the planet. And our mission is focused on drinking water, and that is to perfect water for every person, every place. And we set out to solve one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, goal number 6, which is to achieve universal access to safe and affordable drinking water for everyone by 2030. And as we talked about, as Mani and Oshir both mentioned, the challenges that we have about water, we are approaching 2030 fairly quickly. So we need more innovation, more technologies to address the need of drinking water globally. So as we know, globally, there's a lot of different barriers to getting drinking water, whether it is access to drinking water, and 60% of people around the globe lack access to water, whether they're running out of groundwater or just all the rivers are being dried out because of climate change and higher temperatures. And there's also issues with contamination in places where there is water available. There is a lot of new pollutants in the water. Also reliability issues when it comes to drought and natural disasters that also is a barrier to accessing drinking water globally. And when there is no other source of water, people tend to purchase a lot of water through plastic, which is in turn creating a huge plastic problem. So the place where our technology makes the most sense is in areas where the existing solutions are not really meeting the need. So we are very much focused on remote locations, last mile communities where trucking water is very expensive, and a lot of the times those communities tend to be forgotten. Areas where there's no government infrastructure, and putting pipelines is extremely expensive, and they never really end up getting funding. And we also want to tackle the problem of like women and girls like walking to get water in a lot of places, in whether it is in India or whether it is in countries in Africa. There is over 200 million hours a day collectively that women spend to get water for their families. And in areas like that, like Source would make a huge difference. We also focus on commercial like businesses to curb their plastic pollution, and we become an effective solution in places where desalination, which is most often expensive and very energy intensive, and not necessarily great for the environment. So a little bit about our technology. We tap into the atmosphere to produce drinking water, and we do that using our hydro panel. This is how our hydro panel looks. It's very similar to a solar panel. It works with a combination of both solar PV and solar thermal, and it uses just sunlight and air to make clean drinking water. Our technology is completely off the grid, very decentralized. You don't really need to input any other electric source because the solar and the PV does the job. And we are also able to monitor how the water is produced, how clean the water is at a given time through our cloud connected monitoring, the network operations center that we have in Phoenix. So how does the panel work? The center part of the panel is the solar PV, which is used to power the fans, which are on the side of the panel. The fans bring in ambient air into the panel, and which is then, the air is then passed on to the hydroscopic material, which is our patented technology, and which absorbs all the water vapor from the air. An analogy that we always use to explain that is, say if you have a jar of sugar and then you have the lid open and leave it out for like a few minutes, the sugar starts to form clumps, and because the sugar has a property that absorbs all the water vapor from the air, and that's why the clumps are formed. So in a similar fashion, our hydroscopic material is designed to be highly absorbent. It absorbs all the water vapor from the air that is passed onto it. And because of the constant heating and cooling of temperature within the panel, the water is then condensed into a liquid form. And the water is stored. There's a 30-liter reservoir within each panel, which is where the water is stored. The reservoir is constantly ozonated to make sure the water is not stagnant and it is still safe to drink. Because the water is pure from the start, there is not a lot of treatment required. The only thing we add is calcium and magnesium, which are the minerals which we use to achieve what we believe is an ideal taste profile. So that is like how our technology works, and every panel also comes with a microchip and sensors, which allows our network operations center to monitor the panel, just like any other smartphone. There is an app that will allow you to see how much the panel is producing at a given time, and if there's any maintenance issues, our engineers who are staffed 24/7 can at a given time see if there's any issues with the panels and if the panels are working as they're designed to. And how do we do installations? We usually scale panels based on the need of a community or a school or a residential home. To give you an idea, a two-panel array can meet the needs of a family's need of just drinking water. And like you see in the third photo here, which we call water farms, source water farms, which are a set of arrays just like a solar field, but we use that to meet a community's needs. So since we've been around, we've been deployed in over 52 plus countries, and we've been deployed in various places, places where it's different needs. So for example, in Navajo Nation within the US, or because it is a large amount of area with very spread out population, getting infrastructure there is extremely hard. So because source is so decentralized, it became like a really important solution for the Navajo Nation. We've installed in over 500 homes. And we've also done a lot of work in very remote communities, whether it's in the Philippines or East Timor, completely off-grid. We've partnered with organizations like Starbucks Foundation and Conservation International to do projects like that. We've also worked with a lot of commercial like industries to reduce their plastic pollution. So this is a map that kind of shows you where all have been installed, and regardless of the climate, whether it's dry or humid, our technology has proven to work all over the world. And like I said before, we've been installed in over 52 plus countries, and we want to do more of that in places where there is a very heavy need for drinking water. And some of our partners that we've worked with, very prominent NGOs and nonprofits, whether it's USAID and development banks like ADB. We've done a lot of work with all these, some of our partners. Yeah. And case studies on where we have installed. And this is a village in Vellore, India, where we've done a small community installation in partnership with Select and International Justice System. This is a hotel in New Delhi that we've done. This is a recent installation we've done in Delhi, where we installed 40 source hydro panels to replace the hotel's like plastic bottles with our source water. And this is the project I was talking about in East Timor with Starbucks for coffee growers in East Timor, where we installed panels because the community is located at a very high altitude and the community usually have to walk miles to get water. This is in Philippines, so I'll pause there and then see if you guys have any questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you again very much for that wonderful introduction. One that I found particularly fascinating because it laid out both the issues and explained it in a way that is accessible to our audience who may not have all the expertise that you did. So thank you again very much, Bhargavi. When I'm getting some questions in there that are coming in. So let's take a few questions now, but I want to make sure that we also have enough time to hear from Paulie, because some of the questions that I'm seeing here are probably going to be relevant to both of you. So keep those questions coming. One question that I think is directed specifically at you, Bhargavi, is what is the cost of water compared to traditional systems?
Yeah, so over the lifetime of a hydro panel is 20 years. So I would say the cost ranges between 5 to 10 cents per liter over the course of its lifetime, including the O&M costs and all of that.
Great. And then Zarir Pandara asks, how many gallons are produced by each panel?
Each panel it depends on where they're installed because it's obviously dependent on solar radiance and relative humidity. So at its best, the panel can produce up to 7 liters a day. But we don't really sell a single panel. We usually scale panels based on the need. Just like solar, you don't really sell like a single solar panel in a similar sense. Hydro panels also have to be scaled to meet the drinking water needs.
Another question that is coming from Behram, how long does it take to install the panels? Each panel takes a few hours to be installed. It's a very simple installation. We go through training, whether it's local installation partners or community members. It usually takes a few hours per panel. So based on how many panels you're purchasing, installation can take from a week to a month. That is after the panels are shipped from Arizona. I'll take a couple more here. Zarir has one. What is the total cost in a household in the United States?
Yeah, a 2-panel array can cost up to anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000, which will produce enough water for a family's needs. So by that, I mean a case of drinking water bottles that you buy every day for a family. And that is for 20 years. So it is a investment in drinking water.
And Nilufar asked the question, but I think the answer is that the life of a panel is 20 years. Is that what I understood?
Correct.
Okay, great. Let's hold off some of the other questions because I will come back to them, but I think they apply to both the speakers. So let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Paulie Hada, who is the Chief Technology Officer for WATERMAKER. Paulie, the screen is yours. And thank you again, Bhargavi, for that excellent overview of Source.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, so we are going to talk today about WATERMAKER's atmospheric water generators. This is the water cycle that you see in nature, which is the basis of all our civilization. Water evaporates from the oceans, rises up to form clouds, then condenses and comes down to earth as rain and snow. The melting snow and rains feed our rivers. Some of it seeps underground to form our aquifers and springs. The problem is, as our civilization keeps increasing and we get more industrialized and more affluent, we keep tapping more and more water from all these sources. And so we are facing a tremendous water shortage. So what we would like to introduce to you is atmospheric water generators that use the same cycle that you found in nature. And essentially it's what we call a new source of drinking water. We tell people, traditionally we have been looking down towards earth, towards the ground for our sources of water, but don't do that, look up, because there is much, much more water in the air than all the water flowing through all the rivers of the world. Now, this technology has been around for about 20 years, but the world wasn't quite ready for it. But now we think that our WATERMAKER, along with other technologies, will be a game changer for the world's drinking water needs. And more important, the WATERMAKER is available at an affordable price point for the average consumer. So we can provide safe and reliable drinking water just from the humidity in the air. You condense moisture present as humidity, and then you purify it and store it or dispense it as needed. We sell what we call a refrigerant-based water generators. They work best in areas with high humidity. That is typically within a 5,000-mile band of the equator, but this is where 70% of the world's population lives and where safe drinking water is the most needed. This is like a flow diagram of how the unit works. We draw in warm, humid air by means of a blower. The air is first filtered through an air filter, then passes over cooling evaporator coils. The water condenses, it's collected in a tray and sent to a collection tank. You can keep the water sterile by using either ultraviolet light or an ozonator. After that, you pump the water through various purification cartridges to remove all contaminants, remineralize the water by adding some electrolytes, and then you can either dispense it or send it to storage tanks. We use a conventional refrigeration cycle, the same thing that you see in refrigerators. So we're essentially using a refrigerant, compressing it, and then expanding it to cool the refrigerant. Our WATERMAKER machines have a lifetime exceeding 10 years, and the water produced meets all World Health Organization guidelines. The water is produced at a cost as low as 3 to 5 cents per liter, and that is assuming an electricity cost of about 10 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour in the US. Worldwide, most countries subsidize the cost of electricity, so the cost of electricity worldwide is often much less in many countries. Our units are certified for operation in Europe, and it's a very easy plug and play installation. The customer just has to plug it into an electric power supply, and it's a complete standalone system. The only maintenance needed is once a year, you need to change out your purification cartridge and your ultraviolet lamps. Depending on how much dust there is in the air, you may need to clean out the air filter a little more often, perhaps 2 or 3 times a year. But it's very simple. You just brush the filter or just clean it off with a garden hose. WATERMAKER was started in Mumbai, India in 2004, and we have supplied over 3,000 machines in over 35 countries. And we manufacture the largest range of machines, starting from a low of about 30 liters per day for the average residence to 2,500 liters per day. And we can link the units together to produce as much water as you need. Because we are a low-cost manufacturer, we also act as an original equipment manufacturer for many other corporations that private label our product and then market it. So our models are available in a wide range, from the smallest one for the home that produces 7 gallons per day. It just looks like a standard water cooler in your house, a very small footprint, about 14 inches by 17 inches by about 3 feet tall. The only thing missing is you don't need to put a big water jug over here, a 5-gallon jug or a 3-gallon jug to collect the water. Everything is drawn straight from the air. And we have larger units for industrial and commercial applications. And more important, your water is available and ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can run round the clock. So our WATERMAKERs find application in homes and apartments hospitals, the defense forces of several countries, government agencies, relief organizations, and also for disaster relief. Here we are showing you WATERMAKERs being displayed in Colombia. This was a customer with whom we have a partnership. Here we are showing you WATERMAKERs installed in a children's school in Kenya. Again, these are private labels, so you won't see the name WATERMAKER on it because we make units on an OEM basis for many corporations. We have provided drinking water to entire villages in India. And here we are showing you an installation for a village in Gujarat. We have 2 WATERMAKER units over here, each producing 1,000 liters per day capacity. Water produced is then collected in 3 storage tanks. There you can see the villagers lining up to collect water from the storage tanks. And incidentally, this was the second village that we provided the drinking water needs for the entire village. The first village that we did was in Andhra Pradesh in 2009. I'd like to make a little comment from the water committee of that village. 3 months after installation, they called us to say that they were very happy. Even though we had rated the unit for 2,000 liters per day, the unit was producing as much as 2,400 liters per day. And they said, we are very happy about no longer having to drinking polluted water, which made us sick. And we are also saving a lot of money on medicines that we had to buy. So our WATERMAKERs are ideally suited to meet the demands of scarce water in many parts of the world. Note, we are generating water. We are not just purifying it or treatment of water like you get in desalination or reverse osmosis. And our units cost significantly less than that made by many of our competitors. The units are reliable and it's a decentralized mode of generation. So when you have a number of small rural villages, you don't have to have the infrastructure where you're piping water from one village to the next. Each village has its own source of water. This is a typical water quality test report. This was taken recently by Advanced Environmental Laboratories in the US. And as you can see, our water has absolutely no bacteria, all of them completely removed to below detection limits. And all toxic metals like lead and arsenic are again reduced to way below the detection limits. What is highlighted are the key guidelines by the World Health Organization for water quality. We also add back a trace level of electrolytes to the water like sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Recently, more and more people love to ask for alkaline water, which sells for a real premium in the supermarket. And alkaline water typically has a pH of about 8.5 to 9. And that's the exactly type of water we make. We make a water of pH 9. And our water is crystal clear. The total dissolved solids are extremely low, about 20. So air water generators basically can be classified as operating under 2 broad principles. Refrigerant-based devices like what we talked about, or a desiccant-based device like what Source Global uses. They use what's called a hygroscopic salt. This is similar to silica gel packets that you see when you buy a new appliance. The salt essentially absorbs water from the atmosphere to form what we call a water of crystallization. And then the salt is heated to release the water back. So this is a comparison of the 2 types of technologies. A refrigerant-based device typically costs a lot less in capital. Desiccant-based devices cost quite a bit more. Refrigerant-based devices, however, you need a compressor, and that's why I have high power consumption costs, whereas desiccant-based devices need very little power. Refrigerant device is a continuous operation. You are constantly condensing water and collecting it. Desiccant-based devices can be continuous, but typically it's a batch process. You are having the salt absorb water, Then you take the salt offline to heat it to release the water. The refrigerant devices operate most efficiently when your relative humidity is high, say like 60% or more, whereas a desiccant-based device, because it uses less power, can economically operate even with very low humidity, as low as 5% to up to 25%. Our devices operate better at night when the air is cooler because you need less energy to condense the water out. Desiccant-based devices, if they use solar, are going to operate in the daytime only. If you use an external source of electricity, then they can operate around the clock. These devices, our devices are larger. They can operate from 25 to 1,000 liters per day generation. These devices are typically small unless you link them in with a number of panels. So our units find application primarily in humid areas and for general purpose and industrial needs. Because we can produce large amounts of water, we can also use it for agriculture. The desiccant-based devices are used more for arid areas or very rural areas where there is no infrastructure and off the grid with solar panels. Our units require electricity, though they can operate with solar panels too for small units, typically a residential unit. Whereas the desiccant-based devices, as we said, operate with solar panels only. Thank you. Nashir?
Thank you again very much for that. That was a very good comparison, and it worked out nicely because your closing slides there in some ways provided some of the differences between the two approaches to atmospheric water generation that are reflected in Source Global as well as in WATERMAKER. We have plenty of questions out here already, so I'm going to go ahead and raise some of these questions and request that in the interest of time, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A left, that your responses are kept as brief and pithy as possible. One of the questions that has been asked a few times here, one that was raised by Behram Pastakia, could you suggest how partnerships can be created to promote pro-poor deployment of the technology of extracting water, possibly using corporate social responsibility partnerships as well as others? So these are sort of the ways in which this could be scaled and overcome the economic hurdles. Bhargavi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. How SOARS approaches that is we at first identify communities where there is a very heavy need for drinking water. And then we partner with like local nonprofits or like international NGOs to see if we can jointly pursue funding opportunities, whether it's USAID funding or any other like funding opportunities that are out there for water related issues and water stressed areas. We try to jointly pursue opportunities like that along with nonprofits to be able to install these panels so the burden doesn't fall on the vulnerable population. Sounds
good. Paulie.
I'll defer this to Palan. Palan, go
Actually,
ahead.
I would like to answer that, Nashir.
Go ahead, please.
Essentially, we work with a few partners in India, including, for example, in Mumbai city, we've installed WATERMAKER machines at places like Cooperage, where there's a night library, and the machine is paid for and run by an insurance company in partnership with us, basically. So this is for slum children who come in the night to study there and need a source of water, so they don't have to go outside to get drinking water. So we have been working with a few companies, but it's been a challenge for us because any new technology, it's a very hard, long road to go through unless we get backing of governments and NGOs to sponsor us, basically. Even when we did the village projects in India, it's a long road because first, nobody understands the technology. And secondly, there are cheaper solutions out there. For example, you dig a well, sure, people have been digging wells from caveman days, but you're not making a change, you know? So we're trying to bring, where the world has been talking about alternative energy, we are talking about alternative water now. And to make that change, we need the support of governments, NGOs, and corporates to work with us on long-term solutions.
Great, thank you. I'm going to combine two questions, one by Parisa Farudian, who says, how about an area that the air is polluted? How do they work? And also a question by Zarir Bhandara, can refrigerant-based AWG function efficiently in low humidity areas like California? which is where Zarir Bandar is from.
Okay. All right. Let me take over. Yes, the humidity in California is typically, even in colder climate, South California is around 50 to 60%. Yes, they will work.
And is the issue of pollution, Bhargavi, do you want to field that question?
Yeah, so the hydro panels have both air filter and water filter. The air filter captures all the particulate pollution in the air, and then as long as the gaseous pollutants are present in the air, they don't really condense enough to go into the water. So that's how we kind of capture all the air pollution through the air filters. But what the other gaseous forms of pollution, we try to it doesn't really mix with the water. So whether it is an installation in Delhi or whether it's installation in Arizona, the water still tastes the same. And it's a tested technology.
The hydro panel itself needs to be changed on a recurring basis. Am I right?
No, the hydro panels, the air filter and the
air
water
filters, sorry,
have to be changed annually, and then the mineral cartridge has to be changed every 5 years, and that's really the only maintenance needed for the panel.
And one of the questions that also came up here is, can it be used? I think this was a question by Bhaktawar Desai. How can the WATERMAKER system be used in those areas of the world where electricity is a challenge? Because my understanding is that the technology that is used in WATERMAKER requires electricity, while the one from Source Global doesn't necessarily need electricity. They rely on solar energy. Yeah. So, Paulie, do you want to take that question from Bhaktawar?
Right. Yeah, you need electricity if you are going to produce large quantities of water. We can also use solar panels to generate small quantities of water. Typically, each small residential unit can produce anywhere from 15 to 25 liters per day, about the same as what a hydro panel or whether an array of hydro panels can make. So yes, but if you are going to produce large quantities of water, especially for industrial uses, then you have to have a source of electricity for most efficient operation.
Thank you. And Farouk asks, I think, what is an adjacent question? What refrigerant is being used and what negative impact, if any, does the refrigerant have on the ozone layer? This is Farouk Mystery's question.
Okay, currently, I think we are using MO29. We constantly have to keep abreast of EPA standards as to what is acceptable in different parts of the world. I think eventually we probably will be moving towards what we call flammable refrigerants like propane gas. That's very popular now for commercial refrigerant applications. And I think we see us moving towards that in a few years.
Great. Nilufar Darukhanawala asks,
just let me add that those flammable propellants do not affect the ozone layer and do not cause global warming.
Great. Well, that is part of why we are discussing it on World Environment Day, that these are positive environmental ways of being able to generate water. So thank you for that. So Nilufar Darukhanawala asks, where are all components that make the water generator made?
The source hydro panels are manufactured in Phoenix, Arizona. So that's where we are manufacturing the panels and shipping all over the world right now. But the hope is to kind of change that and then have different manufacturing plants around the world. But that's where we are right now.
Okay.
As far as WATERMAKER goes, I would like to add that our manufacturing facility, and we only have one, is in the suburb of Mumbai city. And most of our components are sourced in India itself, except for maybe 4 or 5 components that go into it, which are imported.
Thank you. Arizu Garib Shahi asks, what is the cost of WATERMAKER machines, for example, for a 31-gallon one?
So a lot of the cost factor has to deal in which country it is going to be stored, because then you have to add freight and customs duties and other expenses that go into it, plus the distribution costs and so on. So, for example, in India, we sell them for just under ₹1 lakh. In the United States, it's probably going to be closer to $2,000.
So a lakh, if
But
I'm
I think-
remembering correctly, is what, 100,000?
100,000 rupees or about $1,200. Yeah.
Great. Mahatab Dastur says, can the system be installed and maintained by those who use it, or is a professional team needed?
Okay. The hydro panels, we can train local communities and local people who are using it to how to install it. They have to go through like an 8-hour training session, but it is something that it's not a very high tech installation or anything. So like anybody who goes through this training should be able to maintain it.
As far as our larger WATERMAKER units are concerned, we have to have them professionally installed for communities. And then maintenance, we teach the local people how to maintain it. And unless something is really dramatically wrong, then we send out a technician, basically.
And Rohinton and Roshan Rivetna are asking, are you, the two of you, are you pioneers in this area? And are there other companies in the world? What percentage of this industry do you provide in between the two of you in the AWG business?
So may I answer that? Basically, I think this atmospheric water generation has been around for a while, and it's been a challenge for most companies. Source is very well, the technology is great. It's a very good solar panel thing, but it's expensive. It's a lot more expensive than a refrigerant-based system. There are probably around 200 to 300 companies in the atmospheric water space. Most are mom and pop shops, basically, and few have attained larger unit scales. 90% of them make only home units made in China or made in Korea. We are one of maybe 2 or 3 manufacturers that there are out of India. And I think there are 2 or 3 manufacturers in the US. That's really about the extent of it. We would love to popularize this to a bigger extent.
So in closing, I'll ask one last question here since we're almost out of time. These are great questions and fantastic answers, and you kept them brief. There's a question from adperrylib@gmail.com. With the world facing severe water shortages, why aren't governments, especially in countries like India or in the continent of Africa, not actively working with and promoting companies presented? And I'll add to that my own challenge based on my personal interest in looking at the fact that we are very likely to become an interplanetary species in the next 2 or 3 decades. To what extent is the technology that you are using here applicable or could be extended to be able to capture water on the moon or on Mars? So challenges in general about this technology.
I think to operate on Moon or Mars, there has to be moisture in the atmosphere, and it doesn't really exist, And so these technologies will not work, If you wanted to form water on Moon or Mars, you probably would have to just start with hydrogen gas and oxygen gas and make water,
Oh, well, you brought me back to Earth. So let's go back to Earth and answer A.D. Perry's question about why aren't governments not more actively partnering with companies like yours?
So I think, sorry, Bhargavi, go ahead.
No, I think the only thing I wanted to add, is I think it's because it's a very new concept, and the government, when you compare it to municipal water, it is still expensive. It is we can be compared to municipal water, which is available free and treating water, we make more sense where there's no other water available. And because it's a new technology, there's a lot of hesitance around it. So unless most governments are asking us to do pilot studies before they could fund a larger scale project, but it is changing. That is something that I would like to add.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again very much for this enlightening presentation and very engaging Q&A. I'm going to hand things over to Mani to take it from here.
No, sure. I think I cut Pawan off, so maybe he wanted to.
Oh, sorry. Pawan, go ahead. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pawan. Thank you.
So I just want to add to what Bhargavi said. Basically, I think the challenge for giving rural water is political. A lot of politics and water go hand in hand, especially in developing countries. And there's a tremendous amount of red tapeism and to any kind of change. Basically, if you want to change from product A to product B, it's a process and it's very complicated and very cumbersome to deal in India. I went to see the Union Minister of Water and Rural Development in India and was literally brushed off, basically. The long story short, to cut it short, is basically, I think it needs the support of corporate entities and NGOs and world bodies to push this through. We are not a cheap solution, but we're a long-term permanent solution, which deals with water scarcity, water on demand, and independence of water. To have water independence is critical today.
Thank you again, and thank you, Bhargavi, for reminding me on making sure we got a chance to hear. That's an important point, Palan, that you made. A lot of politics at the end of the day are going to trump some of the technologies and innovation that we have. And now let me hand things over to Mani.
Thank you, Nashir. I really like to thank our panelists, Bhargavi, Palan, and Polly for their great presentation, and Nashir for superbly moderating the event. I'm sure we all learned a lot about this innovative technology in being able to extract water from air. We can make it available to poor sectors in society, and it can go a long way in promoting good health and well-being to sectors of society who need the most. Lastly, I'd like to thank our chapter executive committee, a few people from outside of our chapter. Just to name the few: Rashna, Nina, Dilnawaz, Rustam Engineer, Yazdi Tantra, our current Global President Percy Master, and our past President Adel Davar, past Global President, and most important person is Dr. Beram Pastakia, who supported me at every step of the way to make this event a great success. And that Adel Davar and Dolly Dastur had done a joint work which was published in spring 2022 issue of Fazana Journal. And that's the nexus between intellectual, social, and economic entrepreneurship. And that's it all about. So I like to close this with a solemn song that it's going to be published soon, but this is a premiere of the song, and I would like to share this with you. And I like to thank Mr. Jamshed Modi for writing the lyrics and trusting in me for recording this song. So if you are ready, Nashir, you can play it.
Your love and care for me are what keeps me alive and well. This truth I clearly see. Though many dangers I will give thanks to you for all the times you fill my cup and gave me courage to God our foremost eternal one, your love and care for me are what keeps me alive and well. This truth I clearly see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this event, and we're on time. So thank you so much for all of you joining. And of course, thanks for Mani and the organizers for convening this event, and our speakers today for enlightening us on World Environment Day. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you back again at future WZCC events from the Chicago chapter as well as elsewhere. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank you,
good
everyone.
day.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Loved it.
Thank you.